It begins with a silence you've never heard before, a stillness so complete it swallows the air itself. You're standing there, in a room that no longer holds the warmth it once did, watching a body that no longer breathes, and yet, something doesn't feel finished. It's not just the ache in your chest, or the way time seems to freeze, it's the unmistakable presence that still lingers in the room. You can't see it, but you feel it, as if the space around you is heavier, as if the energy in the air is holding its breath. You look at the person you once knew, their hands still, their chest unmoving, and you can't shake the feeling that they're still here. Not in memory, not in imagination, but truly here, just outside the veil of your perception. It doesn't make sense logically, and yet, your body knows, your heart knows, something has not left. You begin to realize what most people ignore in these moments. Death is not a sharp exit. It's not a door that slams shut with no warning. It's a transition, eviace, slow, tender, mysterious. When someone exhales for the final time, their soul does not vanish like steam dissipating into the sky. Instead, there is a pause, a sacred pause, a space between the worlds. In that moment, right after the last breath, the soul is still present. It hovers, it lingers, not bound by the flesh anymore, but not yet fully released from it either. What you're witnessing is not just the end of a life. You're standing at the threshold of two realities. You may feel a subtle current of energy move past you. You may notice a flicker of light in the corner of your eye, or perhaps there's a sudden warmth on your skin, even as the room grows cold. These are not tricks of the mind. These are echoes of the soul still finding its bearings, unsure of where it's meant to go next. And in those first few minutes, sometimes hours, the soul simply observes. It watches you cry. It notices the sorrow. It hears the things you whisper through tears. And sometimes, it tries to answer. You might wonder, where does it go? Where is the soul in those first few moments after death? The truth is, it's still here, just not in the way you're used to recognizing. It exists in a state of in-between, not fully in the physical world, and not fully in the spiritual one. Like standing in a hallway between two rooms, the soul must orient itself to this new experience. It's still aware, still conscious, but it's also confused, especially if the passing was sudden or unexpected. You see, for many souls, the separation from the body is not immediate. It takes time. The energetic bond between the spirit and the physical form doesn't simply snap like a broken string. It unwinds. Slowly, gently, sometimes painfully. And in that in-between state, the soul may cling to the familiar, to people, places, and emotions it's not ready to let go of, especially if there's unfinished business, especially if it feels like its departure has left a gaping wound in the hearts of those it loves. That's why you might feel like you're being watched in those early hours, why your dreams might be filled with vivid encounters, why strange things happen, clocks stopping, objects falling, lights flickering. It's not superstition, it's resonance. The soul is still near, still trying to understand what's happening, still trying to comfort those left behind. And maybe, just maybe, it's trying to figure out what comes next. Death doesn't come with a guidebook. The soul doesn't always know where to go, especially if, during life, it was not prepared for this transition. If death came too soon, or if the spirit was deeply attached to this world, there's often confusion, a sense of disorientation. Imagine waking from a dream you didn't know you were dreaming. That's what it feels like for some souls. They hover, uncertain if they're still alive, unsure of why no one seems to hear them anymore. You may be feeling that right now. If you've lost someone recently, you may have walked into a room and felt them there. You may have smelled their perfume, heard their voice in a whisper, or felt a sudden surge of emotion out of nowhere. You didn't imagine it. You were sensing their presence, because they hadn't fully crossed yet, because their soul was still adjusting to its new reality. This stage, this moment after the last breath, is sacred, and it's often overlooked. Modern culture is so quick to close the chapter, to cover the mirrors, to move the body, to speak of moving on, but something powerful is happening in that space, something deeply spiritual. A conversation between realms, the soul is listening, and it may still have something to say. That's why what you do in those first moments matters. The prayers you speak, the love you send, the peace you offer, all of it creates a bridge, a light that helps the soul find its path. Because sometimes, the soul doesn't need answers, it just needs reassurance. It needs to know you're okay, that you'll survive, that your love was received, and it is enough to let go. Death is not the end, it's the beginning of something else, something the mind can't fully comprehend, but the heart can feel. When you're standing beside someone who's just passed, remember, you're not alone, and neither are they. There is a presence in the room, a sacred unfolding. A soul standing in the doorway between worlds, waiting, watching, remembering, love. And as you sit in that silence, that heavy, strange, holy silence, understand that the greatest truth is not that they are gone, but that something of them still remains, not forever, but for now, for this moment. Long enough to remind you that death is not disappearance, it is return. So if you've ever felt like someone was still beside you after they left their body, you were right. You felt the truth most people are too afraid to believe. You felt the soul, still here, still near, just waiting for its next breath, on the other side of the veil. Close your eyes for a moment, and imagine the stillness that follows a final breath. The body lies quiet, unmoving, the heartbeat now silent, but something lingers. You can feel it. It's as if the air itself holds a presence that refuses to leave. You sense that what just happened isn't an ending, but a shift, an invisible threshold being crossed, silently, mysteriously, without ceremony. This is the moment no one sees. Yet everyone will one day experience. The moment when the soul begins to step away from the body, 12, but hasn't yet fully let go. You may think death is instant, that when the body stops, everything else ceases too. But that's not how it works. Not really. In those first sacred moments after death, consciousness does not vanish. In fact, it can become more awake than ever. You are no longer limited by the senses, no longer bound by the physical, but the awareness, your awareness, remains. It floats near the body, observing, listening, feeling. You are there, but no longer of the world in the same way. This is where the confusion begins. For many souls, the transition is not immediate or even clear. The body has stopped working, yes, but the soul doesn't always realize what's happened. You might feel as if you're in a dream, unable to grasp why no one is responding to you. You might try to speak, to reach out, to cry for help, but no sound escapes. You see your loved ones grieving, yet they do not see you. It's like you're shouting across a veil that no longer answers. This early phase is where many souls remain suspended, hovering just beyond the physical, not fully here but not fully gone. And it's not just the suddenness of death that causes this disorientation. It's the deep identity you once held with your body, your name, your life story. When all of that disappears in an instant, the soul sometimes doesn't know who or where it is anymore. The ego, one wronged to, that constructed sense of self, begins to unravel, but the residue of attachment still clings. You might wonder, if the body is gone, what remains? The answer is subtle yet profound. Your emotions, your intentions, your energy field, emotions, they do not die with your body, they follow you. They shape the immediate experience after death. If there was fear, denial, guilt, or intense grief at the moment of passing, these energies can act like an anchor. You might still feel your home, your bed, your name. You might still reach for your phone, try to turn a doorknob, call someone you love, but nothing responds, nothing moves, and slowly, the realization dawns. But even that realization doesn't always come quickly. Some souls remain in this liminal space for hours, others for days, and for some, much longer. Time doesn't work the same way here. What feels like moments might be years. What seems like a blink could span decades. In this threshold, there is no ticking clock, only the soul, gently or painfully, coming to terms with the truth that it no longer belongs to the world it once called home. You may feel pulled in multiple directions, toward light, toward familiar places, toward loved ones, and this is where guidance becomes crucial. Some are met by comforting presences, ancestors, spiritual guides, or even energies they once believed in. These presences often arrive softly, not to force, but to invite. They show the way forward, the path out of confusion and into understanding, but still, not every soul listens. Some resist, some turn back, some simply aren't ready to let go of the life they lived. And it's easy to understand why. Think of everything you've ever loved: your children, your partner, your passions, your unfinished dreams. To walk away from it all without warning? It's no small thing. Even if your body can no longer carry those things, your heart still remembers, your soul still reaches out. So what really happens in those first moments after death is not an escape, it's a confrontation. You are face to face with the life you just left, not through judgment, but through presence. You feel everything more intensely, not less. Every emotion, every regret, every act of kindness, every unspoken word, they echo around you. Some feel light, others heavy, but all of them belong to you. This invisible threshold, then, is not just a crossing, it's a mirror. It reflects who you were and opens the door to who you're becoming. And depending on how deeply you've identified with your earthly existence, the journey across that door can be gentle or turbulent. Those who have spent their lives exploring their soul, contemplating impermanence, or practicing presence, often move with greater ease. For them, the body was never the whole story, so when it's released, they don't feel lost, they feel free. But for others, those who clung tightly to material identity, who feared death, or denied its approach, the moment of separation can feel like being thrown into a fog without a compass. They are still alert, still alive in every sense that matters, but without the anchor of the body, they drift. They watch their funeral, they visit their home, they try to reach out, hoping someone will sense them. And sometimes, you do. Have you ever felt the presence of someone who passed? Maybe it was in a dream so vivid it left you weeping. Maybe it was a sudden scent, a whisper of their voice, or the flicker of a light in an empty room. These are not coincidences. They are the echoes of a soul still navigating that sacred in-between space, still trying to understand, still trying to be understood. This is why the soul doesn't always know it has died. Because death, in truth, isn't a severing, it's a continuation, a shifting of form, of awareness, of identity. The body may fall away like a garment, but the self, the deeper self, remains, and it watches, and it waits, and eventually, it remembers. Not every soul crosses over immediately after death. Some remain, hovering just beyond the veil, still tethered to the world they left behind. And the reason is almost always the same: attachment. It's not that the soul is unwilling to evolve, or incapable of moving forward. It's that something here still holds it, a person, a place, a feeling so strong, so unresolved, that the soul lingers in the space between lives, not unable or unwilling to let go. You've felt it before, even if you didn't know how to name it. A strange heaviness in an old house, a sudden chill in a place that should feel warm, the eerie feeling that someone is standing behind you, even though you're alone. These are not tricks of the mind. These are the fingerprints of energy, the subtle presence of a consciousness that hasn't fully departed. Not a ghost in the way movies describe, not a monster, but a soul stuck in a story it never finished. Some souls simply aren't ready to move on, and it's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet. A longing so deep it becomes an anchor, a grief so raw it keeps the soul near the ones it loved. Death might end the body, but it doesn't dissolve love. And when love becomes entangled with fear, regret, or guilt, it creates a kind of energetic gravity, a force that pulls the soul toward the familiar, toward the unfinished. Imagine dying with words left unsaid, with secrets held too long, with promises you meant to keep but never did. Now imagine waking up outside of your body, watching everything continue without you, and feeling like you weren't ready. That's what it's like for many souls who remain earthbound. They see their loved ones in pain, they feel the shock of being separated from everything they knew, and their spirit clings to what it remembers, what it couldn't finish, what it can't yet release. Sudden deaths are often the most disorienting. Accidents, heart attacks, unexpected events that take the soul by surprise. When there's no time to prepare, no space to say goodbye, the transition can be jarring. The soul may not even realize it has died. It feels alive, conscious, alert, and yet, nothing responds. No one hears it. The house is full, but no one looks its way. This confusion creates a loop, a pattern where the soul continues to walk the same paths, reach for the same doorknobs, whisper the same names. It's waiting for someone to answer, waiting for a sign that it's okay to leave. Then there are those who fear what lies beyond. Souls taught to dread judgment, taught that mistakes equal punishment, taught that death is a reckoning instead of a release. These souls don't run toward the light. They hesitate, they hide, they search for shelter in the only place they've ever known, the world of the living. The vibration of fear lowers their frequency, making it difficult to rise into the higher realms where peace and clarity await. They stay close to what feels familiar, even if it causes them suffering. You may have entered a space like this before, a room where something felt heavy for no reason. Or maybe you've encountered a person who carried a darkness with them that couldn't be explained. Sometimes, the soul doesn't stay attached to a place, but to an emotion, anger, bitterness, betrayal. It wraps itself around these unresolved energies like a vine, feeding off the intensity of the moment that broke it. Time, for that soul, becomes irrelevant. It loops endlessly. Days pass for us, but for the soul, it's still that moment, the argument, the accident, the betrayal. It hasn't moved on because it hasn't felt beyond it. There are also souls who don't linger because of pain, but because of love. A parent who left children too soon, a lover who couldn't say goodbye. These souls may watch over the ones they've left, not out of fear, but out of devotion. They resist the call to move forward, because their hearts are still here. They visit in dreams. They whisper in moments of silence. They try to offer guidance and warmth. But even this loving attachment can delay the soul's evolution, if the connection becomes a chain instead of a bond. The material world is dense. It vibrates at a lower frequency than the realms of spirit. And when a soul carries dense emotions, resentment, shame, despair, it struggles to lift itself into the lighter planes. It stays close to what matches its energy. That's why some spirits remain in houses, objects, even on land that holds deep emotional residue. Trauma has a frequency, so does longing, so does unfinished love. And when these frequencies aren't transmuted, they become echoes, lingering energy patterns that keep the soul close to earth. But just as energy binds, it can also release. When the living heal, when forgiveness is offered, when old pain is acknowledged and transformed, the vibration shifts. And as the vibration shifts, the soul is freed. Sometimes, all it takes is one heartfelt prayer, one whispered, "I forgive you," one moment of peace that opens a door on the other side. The soul is not bound by walls, it is bound by emotion, by memory, by the weight of stories left untold. It wants to move forward. Every soul does. But until it feels complete, until it feels safe, until it feels seen, it may stay close, not to haunt, but to heal, to find resolution, to make peace. If you've ever sensed a presence and wondered why it felt familiar, it's because it was. If you've ever walked into a space and felt like it was holding its breath, it was. The soul you felt was not lost, it was waiting, not for fear, not for power, but for release. And sometimes, that release begins with you. There are moments in your life when the atmosphere suddenly changes. You're alone in your home, lost in thought, and out of nowhere, a chill runs across your skin. The air doesn't feel cold exactly, it feels different, charged, electric, alive. You glance around the room, expecting to see someone standing there, but there's no one in sight. Still, the feeling doesn't go away. It lingers, quiet but insistent, like a whisper you can't quite hear. You shake it off, tell yourself it's just your imagination, maybe a shift in the air conditioning or a trick of your nerves. But deep down, a voice within you knows better. You're not imagining it, you just felt the presence of something that cannot be seen with your eyes. These are the moments you're taught to dismiss. A flickering light, a sudden pressure in the air, a scent that arrives and disappears without explanation, like the smell of your grandmother's perfume long after she's gone. These small events don't scream for your attention, but they tug at you. They nudge your awareness towards something deeper, something beyond logic, something profoundly real. And once you've experienced them, you begin to understand a truth that can never fully be put into words. Just because you can't see someone anymore doesn't mean they're not with you. There are many reasons why a soul might linger close after death. Sometimes it's love, the kind that doesn't break even when the body does. Sometimes it's unfinished business or a desire to comfort the living. And sometimes the soul doesn't even fully realize it has passed. Whatever the reason, their presence is not random. It doesn't just happen. When the soul reaches out to you, it does so through signs, not subtle, powerful, and deeply personal. Dreams are one of the most common and powerful of these signs. You've likely had at least one, a dream so vivid it felt more real than waking life. In that dream, someone you love appears. They don't look sick or sad. They're glowing, healthy, peaceful. Maybe they don't say much. Maybe they don't say anything at all. But you feel something from them. A wave of comfort, a message you receive without words. And when you wake up, you're crying, not because you're afraid, but because you know that was not just a dream, that was a visit. When the soul visits you in your sleep, it's because, in that state, your mind is soft, the walls of logic and skepticism are down, you're open, you're receptive. That's when the veil thins, and when it does, they come, sometimes just for a moment, sometimes for a full conversation, and even if you forget the details by morning, the feeling stays, the peace, the love, the reminder that death is not distance, it's a different kind of nearness. Lights flickering for no reason is another way the presence reveals itself. Electricity is pure energy, and so are you, so are they, and energy responds to intention. When a soul tries to get your attention, they may manipulate light, movement, or even technology. Have you ever had your phone turn on by itself? A song you associate with someone starts playing right when you were thinking of them. Have you found things moved from where you left them? A picture frame turned, a door that gently closes when no breeze is present. These are not accidents. They are deliberate expressions, using the elements of the physical world to say what cannot be spoken anymore. Children are especially sensitive to these signs. Before they are taught what's real and what's not, they can often see and feel what most adults cannot. If you've ever seen a child wave at someone invisible, talk to no one in the corner of a room, or describe visits from relatives long past, take a closer look. Listen. Children are not limited by logic. They exist closer to the veil. They don't question the presence of a soul. They welcome it. And in those early years, they often act as bridges between the realms. Animals, too, have a knowing. A dog that stares into a corner, tail wagging gently as if greeting someone. A cat that suddenly becomes alert, following something with its eyes that you can't see. Pets are energy-sensitive beings. They respond to shifts in vibration long before we notice anything ourselves. If an animal reacts to an invisible presence, it's not superstition, it's recognition. And then there are those signs that are deeply personal, things only you would understand. Maybe it's finding feathers in your path every time you're thinking about someone who's gone. Maybe it's a specific number repeating everywhere you look. Maybe it's hearing your name called softly when no one's around. Or maybe it's just a wave of emotion out of nowhere, so strong and so familiar, it feels like being held. These signs are not random, they're tailored to your connection. They are the language of the soul, and once you learn to listen, you'll realize they've been speaking to you all along. Sometimes, these moments can feel startling or even frightening. That's understandable. You've been conditioned to fear the unknown, but there's nothing to fear when love is involved. A soul that reaches out to you from beyond is not trying to scare you, they're trying to reach you. They want you to know they're okay. They want you to know they're still around, still watching, still loving you from a distance you cannot measure, but can absolutely feel. When you get quiet, when you allow yourself to feel instead of analyze, you begin to sense the depth of these encounters. You notice that your instincts grow sharper, your inner world becomes more alive, and you start to realize you're not being haunted, you're being comforted, guided, reminded. This connection does not weaken over time, it simply changes form. The person you lost hasn't vanished, their body may be gone, but their essence, their consciousness, exists on. And from that new place, they reach for you, through signs, through synchronicities, through dreams, through the unexplainable. You don't need to seek them in haunted places or whisper into darkness, you only need to be still, to soften your doubt and lean into your knowing. The next time you feel that chill with no wind, when the lights flicker without cause, or when a dream wraps around you like arms you've missed, pause, feel, recognize, because you're not alone, you never were, and you never will be. There's a space that exists between the world you can see and the one you can't. It's not a place you walk into. It's not somewhere you can point to on a map. But you've felt it, in the hollow silence of a room after someone has passed, in the sudden chill that creeps across your skin without warning, in the strange awareness that something, or someone, is just behind you, even though you're alone. That space is real. It's the in-between. And for some souls, it becomes a resting place they never intended to stay. When the body dies, the soul begins to separate from its physical form, YDO, but that separation isn't always immediate. It doesn't tear away like paper ripped in half. It stretches, unwinds, lingers. Imagine a cord made of light, thin but strong, stretching from the spirit to the body it once animated. In most cases, this connection begins to dissolve gently, naturally, like breath fading into air. But sometimes, it doesn't. Sometimes, the soul clings to that tether, unsure, unwilling, or unable to let go. This is what some call fluidic detachment. A state where the soul is no longer fully in the body, but not yet fully released into the realms beyond. And in that state, the soul hovers, still present, still perceiving, still tethered, but without direction. It's like being awake inside a dream, unable to touch, unable to speak, yet fully conscious. The soul sees loved ones cry, watches the world carry on, but feels invisible, unheard, weightless, and confused. It may not understand why no one responds. It might not even realize it has died, especially if the death was sudden, traumatic, or emotionally charged. In these cases, the soul lingers in a fog of memory, trying to reach backward instead of forward. This in-between state is not always filled with fear or darkness. Sometimes it's simply marked by confusion. A soul may wander, not out of malevolence, but out of disorientation. It returns to familiar places, a home, a room, a favorite chair, hoping for something to feel real again. But nothing responds. Time passes differently here. What feels like days to the living can feel like moments or years to a spirit. And without guidance, without resolution, the soul can get stuck in that loop, replaying its final memories, reliving its attachments, searching for meaning. Not all souls who remain in this liminal space are suffering, but very few are at peace. They become watchers, observers. They linger in the corners of rooms, along the edges of dreams, in the silence between breaths. They are not trying to harm, they are simply there, present without presence. They watch over loved ones not because they're trapped in hatred or vengeance, but because they don't know where else to go. Their love has become a thread, thin and fragile, that keeps them bound to a world they can no longer touch. And others become whispers. You've heard them. In the dead of night, when your house is still and your thoughts are quiet, a sound calls out softly, a name, a sigh, a sudden whisper that vanishes the moment you pay attention. These are not your imagination, they are echoes of a soul still trying to be seen, still trying to be heard. Some souls become quiet presences, more felt than seen. You walk into a room, and the energy shifts, your stomach tightens, the hairs on your arms lift. You feel as though you've interrupted something that was already there. You don't know why, but the space feels occupied. It is, these spirits don't always reveal themselves directly. They don't always cause disturbance, but they remain. Their essence, their emotional residue, is imprinted on the atmosphere. This residue can be strong or subtle, depending on the life they lived and the emotions they carried when they passed. Joy leaves behind a warmth, a comfort. Grief lingers like a weight. Fear clings like static. Rage crackles through the air, sharp and unpredictable. These energies don't disappear with death. They ripple outward, affecting everything they touch. That's why some homes feel heavy. That's why certain places seem to carry a sadness no one can explain. But not every spirit caught in the in-between is gentle. Some carry unresolved pain that has grown bitter with time. Others may not even realize they are projecting anger or confusion into the space they haunt. They're not malicious in the way stories describe, not demons or monsters, but wounded, lost, and desperate. And, in their desperation, they sometimes seek attention through the only means they still have: fear. They move objects, they disturb dreams, they invade the silence with cold air or electronic static. Not because they want to harm you, but because it's the only way they know to say, "I'm still here." And yet, despite how unsettling these experiences can be, many of these spirits are simply calling out for help. They don't need exorcisms, they need acknowledgement, they need peace. They need someone to feel them, to speak to them, to remind them that it's okay to go, that the world they left will survive, that their time here is done. The in-between is not a punishment, it's not a prison, but it is a place of delay, nos, a spiritual hallway where time and space blur, and if the soul is burdened with unfinished emotion, it can stay there longer than it needs to. You can feel these souls, especially when you're sensitive to energy, especially when your own emotions have softened and you've begun to tune in to the subtle frequencies of the unseen. You may sense that something in your space isn't just memory, it's presence. You may even feel the urge to speak to someone who isn't there, to light a candle without knowing why, to pray when the room feels still and strange. Trust that. Your intuition is often the first thing that senses when a soul is nearby, and sometimes your awareness is the very thing that helps them move on. They may be watching, they may be whispering, but they are also listening to your words, your heart, your intentions. So when you feel them, don't fear them. Speak softly, offer peace, imagine light surrounding them, imagine their tether dissolving, their burden lifting. Remind them, aloud or in silence, that they are loved, that they are forgiven, that it is safe to return to the light, because the in-between is not meant to be permanent. It is a passageway, a threshold, and no soul was ever meant to stay there forever. Not every soul moves on peacefully. Some don't move on at all. While many pass into the next realm guided by light, love, and understanding, others remain earthbound, locked in a strange limbo, not fully alive, not fully gone. Their presence lingers in places, in memories, and in energetic echoes that ripple across the fabric of the physical world. These are the spirits who refuse to leave, not because they are being punished, but because something within them cannot let go. Often, what binds them is emotion, not the lightness of love or the pull of devotion, but heavier things: guilt that burrows deep, vengeance that smolders like coal, fear so raw it builds invisible chains. These feelings can anchor a soul, keeping it tethered to the realm it no longer belongs to. When death comes swiftly or unexpectedly, when the final breath is taken in confusion, rage, or sorrow, the soul may struggle to comprehend what has happened, and in that struggle, it becomes stuck. Imagine a person who dies with the weight of unspoken regret. Perhaps they hurt someone and never made amends. Perhaps they were betrayed and never forgave. Or maybe they spent their life fearing judgment, terrified of what might await them beyond the veil. These unresolved emotions don't disappear at death, they follow the soul, coloring its perception, clouding its ability to see the light that waits to receive it. And so, rather than ascend, the soul clings to what it knows, the places, the people, the patterns of its former life. Some of these spirits loop endlessly in the memory of their final moments. It's not always a conscious choice. For some, death is so traumatic or sudden that they don't even realize it has occurred. They may find themselves reliving the moment over and over again, playing it out like a scene stuck on repeat. A soldier lost in battle, still ducking invisible gunfire. A person who died in a car crash, standing on the roadside, confused by the stillness. A heart attack victim pacing the hallway, unaware their body was carried away hours ago. These spirits wander through what they believe is still their reality, unable to grasp that time has moved on without them. Others return to their homes, drawn by the comfort of familiarity or the illusion of control. They linger in kitchens they once cooked in, stand beside beds where they used to sleep, sit in their favorite chairs even though no one sees them there. Sometimes their presence is gentle, a whisper, a scent, a faint shift in temperature. Other times, it becomes stronger, more restless. Objects are moved, shadows flicker, pets grow uneasy. The house begins to feel different. And then there are those who return to their loved ones, not to harm or haunt, but because their attachment runs too deep to sever. A parent who cannot bear to leave their child. A spouse who died too soon, still aching to say goodbye. These spirits often watch in silence, aching to be noticed, longing to be heard. Their presence can be felt in the way a room suddenly quiets, or how the air thickens with emotion. They mean no harm, but their refusal to cross over can disturb the balance between the living and the departed. Some spirits, however, carry darker intentions. Not all souls find peace in death. Those who die with hatred burning in their chest, those who feel wronged or betrayed, can become fixated on vengeance. These spirits may seek out the living, trying to influence events, whispering thoughts into minds already weakened by grief or anger. They don't always know they're doing it. They're not monsters. They're wounded, confused, but their energy is volatile, and their presence can create chaos. These lingering souls often find resonance in places of tragedy, abandoned buildings, battlefields, sites of trauma. Their energy saturates the walls, sinks into the floorboards, lives in the silence between footsteps. People who are sensitive to energy can feel it, the heaviness, the unease, the sense of being watched. These are the places where time feels warped, where the veil grows thin, where the past hasn't fully let go. And sometimes, it isn't the place that holds them, it's the people. A soul may attach itself to someone still living, especially if that person is emotionally vulnerable. The bond can be born out of love, or sorrow, or in more troubling cases, control. A mother who won't release her child may linger for decades, her energy entwining with the child's life in subtle ways. A bitter spirit may hover around a former rival, attempting to stir conflict, sow confusion, or prevent healing. These aren't horror stories, 1905, they're spiritual entanglements, and they often go unnoticed until the signs become too obvious to ignore. The longer a soul stays earthbound, the harder it becomes to move on. Over time, their sense of identity fades. They may forget who they were. Their emotions loop without context. They become shadows of their former selves, echoes vibrating through time and space. And yet, they are not beyond help. These spirits can be reached, they can be released, but not through fear or force. They need compassion, understanding. They need someone to speak to them, to recognize them, to say what was never said while they were alive. Sometimes, all it takes is a moment of stillness, a whispered invitation to let go, to be free, to find peace. For the living, it means holding space for the unseen. It means acknowledging the possibility that what you feel is real, that the presence in the room isn't just a trick of the mind. It's a soul, trying to be heard, trying to understand, trying, in its own way, to heal. You might never know who they were. You might never understand why they linger. But your awareness, your willingness to acknowledge the unseen, can begin the process of release. Speak gently. Send thoughts of love and forgiveness. Light a candle. Offer a prayer. Ask for guidance. You are more powerful than you realize, and your intention carries weight in both worlds. In the end, the souls who refuse to leave are not trying to defy the natural order. they're trying to resolve what feels unfinished. They need time, they need help, and most of all, they need someone who can see them not as something to fear, but as someone who once lived, once loved, and still matters. Because every soul, even the restless, is seeking one thing, peace, and sometimes the light they need to find it is the one you carry. There is no universal clock ticking down the moment a soul leaves the body. No stopwatch in the spiritual realm counting the seconds until a soul crosses into the light. When it comes to how long a soul can stay among the living, the answer is as fluid and varied as the lives we live. Some souls leave almost instantly, gliding into the next dimension with grace and ease. Others linger, for days, months, even centuries, caught in a web of memories, emotions, and attachments they're not yet ready to unravel. There is no set rule, there is only energy, and that energy determines everything. You might assume that death is a clean break, a sudden and final goodbye, but more often, it's a process. Delicate, personal, and deeply affected by the soul's inner state at the time of departure. A soul that dies with peace in its heart, with love in its breath, and acceptance in its bones, often moves on quickly. It knows, on some level, that the journey is continuing, not ending. It embraces what comes next with openness, but for others, it's not so simple, and that's where things get complicated. Imagine leaving behind a body that felt unfinished, a life with loose ends, regrets, promises not yet fulfilled. Imagine dying with guilt hanging heavy in your chest, or with a deep longing for someone you couldn't say goodbye to. Now imagine trying to move forward when your very essence is still anchored to those emotions. This is what keeps many souls near. It's not chains or punishment, it's energy, and more specifically, the emotional residue that hasn't yet been cleared. The duration of a soul's stay among the living is not dictated by time in the way we understand it. The spirit world doesn't follow the same linear progression. To a soul, a week can feel like a moment. A century can pass in what feels like a dream. What matters isn't the clock, what matters is release. Until the soul lets go of the ties that bind it, it cannot fully ascend to the next realm. And that release is a process of inner alchemy, NET, transforming pain into understanding, attachment into peace, fear into trust. Some souls manage this quickly. They receive help from spiritual guides. They recognize that they've passed and surrender to the journey. But others remain confused, especially those who experienced sudden or violent deaths, or those who carried deep trauma. These souls may linger in the same places they died, trying to piece together what happened. They may revisit homes, families, or familiar locations, hoping for comfort or closure. They may not even realize that time is passing. They only know that something feels unfinished. And then there are souls who are drawn back again and again. These are spirits who crossed over but return frequently, visiting loved ones, watching over descendants, maintaining a connection to the physical world. Some come back with love, others return out of concern, and some revisit because they sense that the people they left behind haven't yet let them go. That tether works both ways. Just as a soul can resist release, so too can the living, through grief that clings too tightly, through refusal to accept the death, through holding on to the presence of someone who's no longer meant to be here. That's why your vibration matters. The energy you carry, your emotions, thoughts, and intentions all affect the soul's journey after death. If you're holding on with desperation, replaying the pain, speaking only to the absence instead of the love, you may unintentionally anchor a spirit that's trying to leave. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because energy is powerful. It responds. The more peaceful your heart becomes, the easier it is for the soul to rise. The more you release your need to keep them close, the more they're able to continue their own healing. Prayer plays a significant role in this, not just as a religious act, but as a frequency. When you pray for someone who has passed, you're sending them light. You're offering them warmth in a realm that can sometimes feel cold and confusing. Your words, your thoughts, your loving intentions become guideposts, beacons, signals that help the soul find its way. You don't need to know what to say. You only need to mean it. Speak from the heart. Offer peace. Offer love. Offer permission. Some cultures have known this truth for centuries. They hold ceremonies for the dead long after the body is buried. They light candles, chant mantras, or leave offerings, not because they fear the dead, but because they understand that death is a crossing, not a vanishing. They know that the energy of the living can ease that crossing, or slow it down. They know that their vibration continues to echo in the field where the soul now resides. There are stories, passed down quietly through generations, of spirits who stayed too long. A soldier who remained on the battlefield for over 100 years, searching for his comrades. A woman who walked the halls of her home for decades, waiting for the child she lost. These are not myths, they are truths wrapped in metaphor. These souls stayed not because they were cursed, but because their love and pain were stronger than their willingness to let go. But there is always a way forward, always. No soul is ever trapped forever. The moment there is awareness, there is choice. And sometimes that awareness comes through you, through your words, through your intention, through the moment you say, I love you, but it's okay now, you can go. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean severing the connection. It means honoring the journey of the soul beyond your own. It means trusting that the love you shared cannot be broken by distance, or time, or death. That love continues, it evolves, and it becomes a light they can follow home. So how long can they stay? As long as it takes, as long as they need, as long as you both are still holding on. But it doesn't have to be forever. When you release your grief, when you soften your sorrow, when you speak their name with joy instead of pain, you give them wings, you lift the weight. And in that sacred moment, a soul that once lingered finds the courage to rise. That is how the timeline ends, not with a clock, but with a release. There's a presence that walks with you, even when you think you're alone. It lingers in the quietest moments, when the world has gone still, when your mind finally softens, when your heart whispers for someone you've lost. In these spaces, you might feel something. A shift in the room, a wave of emotion that rises without warning, a sensation that someone is standing right behind you, though you hear no footsteps. These aren't tricks of the mind. They are communications, delicate, precise, and deeply intentional. The soul, once freed from the physical body, doesn't simply vanish, it evolves, and in that evolution, it finds new ways to reach you. When a spirit tries to communicate, it does not do so through language as you know it. There are no mouths to speak, no hands to write, no phones to call. Instead, it uses the language of energy, subtle shifts in your environment, emotional impressions, vivid imagery, and synchronicities so sharp they cut through your skepticism. You may experience it as a scent that appears from nowhere, the familiar fragrance of a loved one who passed, arriving in a room where no one else is wearing it. Maybe it's the scent of tobacco, perfume, or even a specific meal you used to share. You breathe it in and feel an overwhelming sense of memory, as if time has folded and that person is suddenly right beside you. Then there are the sounds. A soft knock with no source, a voice calling your name when you're alone, footsteps in the hallway, even though everyone else is asleep. Sometimes it's the static crackle of a radio that wasn't turned on, or the faint echo of laughter from a room you haven't entered in years. These aren't hallucinations. They're energetic imprints, Raponali's soul learning to use the environment as a canvas, painting with vibrations, crafting subtle moments that say, I'm here. Visual contact, though rare, is one of the most powerful forms of spirit communication. Some have seen full apparitions, figures standing in doorways, sitting at the edge of the bed, or passing through a hallway only to vanish moments later. These sightings are often brief and fleeting, but they leave a lasting imprint on your memory, etched in your soul like a photograph you'll never forget. More commonly, you'll catch a glimpse out of the corner of your eye, a shadow that moves where it shouldn't, a flicker of light, a silhouette that disappears when you turn to face it. These quick flashes aren't mistakes, they're intentional. The soul chooses the moment carefully, not to frighten, but to remind you that love doesn't disappear just because the body does. Of all the ways the departed reach out, dreams remain the most direct and accessible channel. In dreams, the boundaries of the physical world dissolve, the walls you put up during the day fall away. You're open, unguarded, and receptive. That's when they come, not as hazy, confusing figures like in ordinary dreams, but as unmistakable presences, vivid, clear, real. You might wake up remembering the conversation word for word, or simply feeling the warmth of a hug you've missed for years. Sometimes, nothing is said at all, just the presence is enough. These visitations often bring peace. You wake up with tears in your eyes, but your heart feels lighter, as if something that needed to be said was finally spoken, even in silence. Spirits can also communicate by influencing your emotions and thoughts. Have you ever felt an unexpected wave of calm when you were anxious, as if someone unseen placed their hand on your shoulder and whispered, "It's going to be okay"? Have you suddenly remembered a moment you hadn't thought about in years, not as a passing thought, but like reliving it in full detail? These are not coincidences, they're nudges. Memories brought to the surface by a soul who knows exactly what you need to feel in that moment. They don't need to say anything, because the memory itself is the message. Electrical interference is another common form of contact. Spirits, being pure energy, often manipulate energy around them to send signs. Lights flicker without explanation. Electronics turn on or off on their own. TVs, radios, and phones may behave oddly, playing songs or flashing images that hold meaning to you. It's not about the device, it's about the energy field. The spirit uses it like a paintbrush, crafting a moment that stands out, something impossible to ignore. And when you notice, when your breath catches, and you feel the pulse of connection, that's when the message has landed. Some souls use patterns and synchronicities as their language. You keep seeing the same number everywhere, on clocks, receipts, license plates. You hear the same phrase repeated by different people in the same day. You keep bumping into reminders of someone who has passed, photos falling off shelves, books opening to the same page, butterflies appearing every time you think of them. These are not random. The universe itself becomes a stage for the soul to perform small miracles, each one orchestrated to catch your attention, to say, "Notice me, I'm still with you." Children, still fresh from the other side, are often remarkably attuned to these energies. They speak to people you cannot see, they mention names you haven't spoken aloud in years. They describe places or events they couldn't possibly know. Their innocence, their openness, their lack of conditioning makes them beautiful receivers. To a child, the spirit world is not strange, it's just part of life. They haven't yet learned to doubt what they see, and in their world, imaginary friends may not be imaginary at all. Animals, too, are incredibly sensitive. Your pet may suddenly perk up and stare at something invisible. They may bark or purr at empty corners, or curl up in a spot where someone used to sit. They sense shifts in energy. They react to presences that go unnoticed by the human eye. When your dog refuses to enter a room, or your cat sleeps where your loved one used to rest, pay attention. Animals feel what we've been taught to ignore, and their reactions are often the first indication that a soul is near. What matters most is this: you don't need to be psychic to feel the presence of someone you've lost, you only need to be open. The signs are already there. They arrive in moments of stillness, in flashes of memory, in dreams that feel more real than daylight. They come when you're hurting and when you're healing. They don't always speak in words, but in emotion, in energy, in synchronicity. And once you begin to recognize the language, you'll see that you've never really been alone. The soul's love doesn't end at death. It becomes movement, message, memory. It becomes light, flickering in the dark, laughter in the silence, comfort in your grief. And when you pay attention, when you respond with trust instead of fear, you open the door to a connection that defies the limits of time and space. They are still speaking, still reaching, still walking beside you in ways the world may never see, but your heart always will. There comes a moment in every soul's journey when something shifts. It's not loud, it doesn't come with flashing signs or grand announcements. It begins quietly, like the slow lifting of a veil, or the soft opening of eyes that have been closed for far too long. In that moment, the soul realizes something it hadn't fully accepted until now. I'm no longer part of this world. It isn't always immediate. Some souls take their time. They linger, observe, feel, and sometimes even resist. They replay memories like loops of a film, revisit the places they loved, watch the people they left behind. They wait for closure, for understanding, for the right energy to nudge them forward. But eventually, that moment arrives. A subtle recognition, a stillness, a surrender, and in that space, something sacred begins to unfold. The soul, now aware of its own transition, no longer clings to the life it once lived. The attachments begin to loosen. The identity it wore in the physical realm, role, the name, the body, the roles, role, begins to fade like fog under sunlight. What's left is the core essence, the being beneath the being. And, as the soul lets go of who it thought it was, it starts to feel who it truly is, and that's when the light appears. Not a light in the way we know it, not artificial, not even like sunlight, but something far more alive. This light is conscious, it calls, it welcomes. It envelops the soul in warmth, not heat, in love, not pressure. It's not something the soul is forced to enter, it's something it remembers. As if a long-forgotten truth rises back into awareness. No, this is where I came from, and this is where I'm meant to return. But the soul is not alone in this crossing. As it stands at the threshold between the physical and the eternal, something beautiful begins to happen. Beings of light begin to emerge. They don't always appear in the way you might imagine. Sometimes they come as familiar faces, ancestors, loved ones who have crossed before, old friends long past. Sometimes they appear as guides, radiant presences who feel both foreign and familiar, unknown and yet deeply known. Their form doesn't matter as much as their essence, because when they arrive, the soul feels safe, it feels seen, it feels home. These spiritual guides or ancestral beings don't force anything, they don't command or demand, they offer, they extend an invitation, and they wait with infinite patience. They understand that letting go of the world is an act of courage. They know that the soul must be ready, so they stand beside it, quietly, lovingly, until the soul takes that step on its own. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. The soul doesn't lose everything it was. It simply stops identifying with it. The memories, the emotions, the experiences, they're not erased. They're integrated. They become part of the soul's expanded awareness, no longer filtered through the lens of fear or time. Grief transforms into compassion. Regret becomes understanding. Love remains. Always, love remains. The letting go is gentle. It's like water slipping through open hands. There's no struggle when the soul is ready, no resistance, only release, like exhaling after holding your breath for too long. The soul begins to rise, not as a floating body, but as a vibration, frequency attuned to the higher planes of existence, and the light grows stronger, not brighter, but deeper. It becomes a path, not a road, not a tunnel, but a stream of energy that moves through dimensions unseen. Some describe it as the light pathway, DTD, a corridor made not of space but of remembrance. Each step forward is a step inward. As the soul travels, it's not going away from something. It's moving toward its origin, toward source, toward that place of wholeness that was always waiting just beyond the veil. During this crossing, many souls report feeling completely embraced, not judged, not analyzed, just held. There is no checklist, no final exam, only the presence of truth. And truth doesn't punish, it reveals. The soul sees its life with clarity, without shame, without defense. It understands why it made certain choices. It sees how its actions rippled outward. It recognizes its impact, both light and shadow, and holds it all with compassion. This is not a courtroom, it's a reunion. And yet, the journey isn't always linear. Some souls begin to cross, and then pause, not out of fear, but out of love. They look back one last time. They visit in dreams. They whisper through wind and touch through synchronicity. But eventually, even those souls move on. because the pull of light is not something you can ignore forever. It calls to what is deepest in you, and when you are ready, it becomes irresistible. There's something profoundly humbling about this entire process. To know that every soul is given its time, that no one is forced, that every being is met with love, no matter what path it walked in life. Some may have carried pain, caused pain, or lived in confusion, but in this space, there is only the truth of who they really are, beyond the layers, beyond the noise. The light doesn't ask what you did, it asks, are you ready to come home? And when the soul finally says, yes, there's no resistance, no fear, just peace, just the soft, eternal embrace of the unseen, welcoming the traveler home. So when you lose someone, when their body stills and their voice fades, remember that they are not gone, they are journeying, and when they are ready, when the time is right, they will follow the light, not into oblivion, but into remembrance. Not into darkness, but into the deepest, most radiant truth of who they've always been, and in that moment, as they cross, they are not alone, they are guided, they are loved, they are finally free. There's something sacred that happens when you close your eyes, lower your voice, and speak not to the living, but to the unseen. You may feel unsure if your words are heard. You may even wonder if you're just speaking into the silence. But the soul, even after death, listens. It listens in ways far beyond what you can imagine, and that's why your prayers matter. That's why your love matters, not just to comfort yourself, but to help the one who has passed move forward with grace and peace. When a soul leaves the body, it doesn't instantly shed every emotion, every attachment, or every tether it held to this world. The transition, as powerful as it is, can still be heavy with memory. Sometimes the soul still feels responsible for those left behind. Other times, it's burdened by unresolved pain, regret, or fear. In this vulnerable state, the vibration you send out, especially through prayer and loving intention, becomes more than just thought. It becomes a bridge, a light in the distance, a thread that helps them rise. Prayer isn't just a ritual. It's not confined to religion or doctrine. It is energy in motion, directed with clarity and heart. When you pray for someone who has passed, you are not begging for something to happen. You are aligning yourself with peace and offering it to them. You are holding them in your heart, bathing them in compassion, and releasing them into love. That act alone alters the energetic environment around both of you. It invites softness. It creates openings. It tells the soul that they are not forgotten, not bound, not trapped, that they are loved, unconditionally, even now. You may not always feel something in the moment. You may not see a sign or hear a voice, but that doesn't mean it isn't working. Energy moves in layers. Your words ripple through dimensions you cannot see. And sometimes, those words are the very thing a soul needs to let go of the weight it still carries. Maybe they needed forgiveness. Maybe they needed to hear, "It's okay now, you can rest." Maybe they just needed to feel your love again, free from grief, free from clinging, free from the ache that held both of you in place. It's easy to think that peace only comes with time, but in truth, peace comes with presence. When you choose to be still and open your heart to the one who's gone, you create space for healing to unfold. You don't have to know exactly what to say, you don't have to follow a script, just speak from your soul. Speak to them like they are still here, because in many ways, they are. Say their name. Tell them what you wish you'd said. Share your thoughts, your memories, your tears. Every word is a vibration, every feeling is a transmission, and in that sacred exchange, healing occurs on both sides of the veil. There's a kind of love that doesn't end with death. It deepens, it expands, it becomes something more pure, more eternal, more untouchable by time. When you hold someone in your heart and send them love without expectation, you are not just keeping their memory alive, you are nurturing their journey. You are lighting the path they may still be walking. And sometimes, when you do this, something unexpected happens. The peace you give them returns to you. Your own heart feels lighter, the grief softens, the heaviness begins to lift, because when you free them, you begin to free yourself. Many people are afraid to let go because they believe it means forgetting. But letting go is not forgetting. It is releasing the weight of suffering. It is allowing love to flow without resistance. It is trusting that the bond you share is bigger than death and doesn't require holding on with pain. You're not abandoning them by moving forward. You're honoring them by choosing joy, by choosing peace, by continuing your own journey with grace. When you reach that point, when your love is no longer tangled in grief, the soul feels it. They receive it like a warm wind that carries them upward. There's a reason many cultures across the world hold ceremonies and prayers for the dead. It's not just tradition, it's wisdom. It's acknowledgement that the connection between souls doesn't sever when the body dies. There is a process to the soul's departure, and those left behind play a powerful role in that process. Your emotional state matters, your energy matters. When you are consumed with despair, it can create a heaviness the soul feels. But when you radiate love, when you open your heart in stillness and speak with tenderness, it creates a vibration that guides them gently into the light. If you've ever sat in quiet and felt an urge to talk to someone who has passed, don't ignore it. That's not your mind playing tricks. That's your intuition sensing the opportunity to connect. Light a candle if it helps. Close your eyes. Breathe. Speak from the place inside you that knows love never ends. You may find that words begin to pour out without effort. You may find that tears come easily. Or you may feel a calm presence settle around you like a soft blanket. These are signs that the soul is listening and responding. You might also notice, after a sincere prayer or moment of loving release, that the signs start to appear more clearly. A sudden dream that brings peace. A song that plays at just the right time. A familiar scent in an unfamiliar place. These are not just coincidences. They are echoes, confirmations. The soul saying, "I heard you, thank you." The beautiful truth is that your heart is a transmitter. When you think of them with pain, you send out static. But when you think of them with love, with peace, with forgiveness, you become a beacon. And that beacon matters more than you know. It becomes part of their path. It becomes a thread they can follow, a vibration they can lean into. It reminds them that they are safe, they are seen, they are still deeply connected to the life they left behind. So never underestimate what you offer when you pray with sincerity, when you think of them not in suffering, but in celebration, when you allow yourself to feel the bond without needing to control or hold on. That is true spiritual maturity. That is love without limits. And it is in that space that miracles unfold, not only for them, but for you. Because healing doesn't end with death. Forgiveness doesn't expire at the grave. And love, real love, transcends the walls of this world. Every word you whisper, every tear you shed, every smile you offer in their memory becomes part of something far greater than you can see. It becomes a blessing, a release, a light in the dark. And sometimes, that's all a soul needs to finally go home. Not every soul chooses to move on, even when the light is present and the path is clear. Some remain behind, entangled in memories, attachments, or unfinished emotions that weigh too heavily on their spirit. They linger, not just as passive observers, but as active participants in a world they are no longer meant to influence. And while some of these spirits remain gentle, confused, or protective, others shift into something more troubling, well-manned, a presence that begins to interfere, to attach, to disturb. When a soul refuses to cross over, its vibration changes. It begins to feed on what it once felt, and the longer it lingers, the more distorted that energy can become. When a spirit remains too long on the material plane, it starts to lose its sense of self. Its connection to divine truth weakens, and what was once love, grief, or guilt can twist into obsession. These are the spirits who become fixated on a person, a place, or even a pattern of thought. They loop through old memories, haunt old emotions, and sometimes reach toward the living with desperate intensity. They are not inherently evil, but they can become dangerous. Not because they are monsters, but because they are lost, fragmented, and hungry for resonance. And resonance is everything. You've probably felt this before, even if you didn't know what it was. the sudden wave of anxiety that enters a room with no explanation, a heaviness that sits on your chest in the dark, a repeating thought that doesn't feel like yours but keeps pressing itself into your mind. These are the fingerprints of a soul that has not crossed, one that is searching for a match, a host, or a home in a world that no longer belongs to it. These lingering spirits are sometimes called obsessors, entities that attach themselves to the energy of the living, often feeding off emotions like fear, grief, anger, or depression. They are drawn to low vibrations because that is where they now exist. Their own unresolved emotions become magnets, pulling them toward people who mirror what they feel. If you are consumed by sadness, they sense it. If you are holding unprocessed rage, they resonate with it. If you are afraid, truly afraid, they know, and in that knowing, they find a way in. It doesn't always look dramatic. Not every possession is like the horror movies depict. Often, it's subtle, a shift in behavior, a heaviness in thought, a recurring dream that turns dark over time. You might begin to feel unlike yourself, more agitated, more exhausted, less clear. As if someone or something is sitting in the corner of your life, influencing your thoughts just enough to keep you distracted and drained. That is the nature of attachment. It's not always violent, sometimes it's just persistent. For those who are spiritually sensitive or energetically open, the risk is even greater. Your openness is a gift, but it must be guarded. Without boundaries, you become a lighthouse not just for lost souls seeking light, but for shadows looking for somewhere to hide. And they will hide in your emotions, in your fatigue, in your grief. They don't always come with malice, but over time, their presence distorts your energy field. It can affect your body, your mind, your relationships. It can pull you into patterns that aren't yours, thoughts that don't belong, moods that arrive without cause and stay too long. This is why spiritual hygiene is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Just as you clean your physical body, you must care for your energetic field. You must learn to recognize when something foreign is trying to enter, and more importantly, how to clear it. Protection isn't about fear, it's about sovereignty. It's about remembering that your energy is sacred, and not everything has a right to access it. The first step is awareness. Learn to discern what is yours and what is not. Pay attention to shifts in your mood, especially when they happen suddenly or seem out of character. Notice repetitive thoughts that carry a different tone or weight than your usual internal voice. Observe the spaces you enter, how they feel, how your body reacts, what your intuition says. Your body is a sensor, it knows. Trust it. The second step is intention. Your words are powerful, your boundaries are sacred. Speak aloud when necessary. This space is mine. No energy that is not of the light may remain here. Say it with clarity. Say it with strength. The spiritual world responds to intention. When you declare your space as sovereign, many entities will respect that boundary, especially if you hold it consistently. The third step is cleansing. Use whatever methods resonate with you. Burn herbs like sage, palo santo, or cedar. Use sound, bells, singing bowls, or even your own voice. Open windows. Let light in. Visualize your home and your body filled with golden light, washing away anything that doesn't belong. Call on spiritual protection, not from a place of fear, but from a place of alignment. Invite higher vibrational beings, your guides, your ancestors, to guard your space and help any lingering spirits move on. And perhaps, most importantly, address your own emotional state. Spirits attach through resonance. When you heal your grief, process your trauma, and raise your vibration, you become less of a match for these lingering entities. They cannot latch on to what no longer reflects them. When you rise, they fall away. When you become clear, they become visible, and then you can send them onward. Not all spirits who stay behind are dangerous. Some are simply confused, lost, still searching for the peace they couldn't find in life. You can help them too, not by holding on to them, but by releasing them with love. Speak to them, tell them it's okay to go, light a candle, offer a prayer, let them know they are seen, that they are forgiven, that their time here is done. But never forget that your energy is your own. You are not obligated to carry spirits that do not belong to you. You are not required to become a host for unresolved pain that isn't yours. You have the right to stand in your light and declare your space sacred. Because when spirits don't cross over, they can distort the lives of the living. They can create confusion, chaos, and fatigue, but only if you allow it, only if you forget who you are. Remember that you are not powerless. You are a living soul, vibrant, sovereign, connected to the divine, and when you reclaim your space, when you clear your energy, when you speak with truth and clarity, the lost begin to move on. And in doing so, both you and they find peace. When the soul finally lets go of its earthly ties, when the pull of physical life has softened and the attachments have been released, it begins a journey that few truly understand. What happens beyond death is not an ending, but a vast unfolding. The soul doesn't simply vanish or rest in a static place. It moves, it learns, it expands. And this movement, not men, this upward, inward, timeless movement, not men, is a return home, yet also a step forward. It's the beginning of a journey into higher dimensions of consciousness, where the limitations of time, body, and ego no longer apply. The first phase beyond the earthly realm is often gentle and filled with guidance. The soul is met, not with judgment, but with awareness. It begins to see itself clearly, sometimes for the first time. This process is what many call the life review. It isn't like watching a movie of your past, it's deeper than memory. You feel everything again, not only your own emotions, but the feelings of others you affected. When you spoke words of kindness, you feel the warmth it brought. When you acted in anger or ignorance, you experience the pain it caused. But it's not punishment, it's illumination, it's understanding. The soul sees the full ripple of every action, every choice, every moment, and through that vision, growth begins. This review isn't conducted by some external judge. You are the one who sees. You are the one who feels. The purpose is not shame, it's evolution. The soul longs to understand itself, to grow in wisdom, compassion, and love. This clarity prepares the soul for healing, because no soul leaves earth without wounds. Life, in its complexity, carves marks into your energy field. There are scars from grief, from betrayal, from fear. There are also imprints of joy, of laughter, of unconditional love. All of it is carried forward, and all of it is tended to with care. In these higher planes, healing is not done through time, but through vibration. The soul enters spaces, realms, that are tuned to the frequencies it most needs. For some, this might look like peaceful landscapes, familiar and serene. For others, it might be more abstract, waves of color, music, or light that envelop and cleanse. These realms aren't physical, yet they are more real than anything the body ever touched. They are rich with presence, with intelligence, with a love so profound it defies language. And within this sacred environment, the soul recalibrates. It releases the density of human emotion. It sheds identities it no longer needs. It remembers itself not as a personality, but as an eternal consciousness. Once the healing has settled, the soul begins to reflect on what's next. Contrary to popular belief, not every soul reincarnates right away. Some rest for what we would think of as years, even centuries. Others return quickly. The pace is not uniform, because the soul's path is deeply personal. There is no race, no external clock ticking. Only the natural rhythm of growth calling the soul forward when it's ready. During this space between lives, the soul enters a state of planning. It reflects on lessons learned and identifies the experiences still needed for its evolution. It consults with beings of wisdom, with guides, sometimes even with members of its soul family. Now, other spirits it travels with across lifetimes. These planning stages are not scripted with absolute detail. The soul doesn't choose every moment, every word that will be said. Instead, it chooses the themes, the challenges, the opportunities, the energies it wishes to explore. It may choose to face abandonment in order to learn self-love. It may choose loss to deepen empathy. It may choose wealth or poverty, power or obscurity, illness or brilliance, not as rewards or punishments, but as environments through which consciousness expands. And through each life, the soul evolves in ways the human self may never fully comprehend. This in-between time is also used to repair spiritual connections. Souls who hurt each other in life may meet in these higher realms and resolve their energies. They may plan to meet again, in different roles, to balance what was unbalanced. What we call karma is not a cosmic punishment system. It is the natural process of cause and effect, and the soul's desire to restore harmony. In these realms, free from ego and fear, forgiveness is more easily found. Souls recognize each other across lifetimes. They embrace, they weep, they remember, and in remembering, they heal. One of the most beautiful aspects of the soul's journey beyond Earth is the sheer expansiveness of it. The earthly plane is just one layer in a vast field of existence. Beyond it are countless other dimensions, each vibrating at a higher frequency, each revealing more of what the soul truly is. Some of these realms are focused on healing and rest. Others are places of learning, where souls study universal laws, sacred geometry, the mechanics of creation, and some realms are devoted to service, where evolved souls act as guides to those still incarnating, offering wisdom and gentle nudges to those who seek it. The purpose of all of this is not escape. The soul isn't trying to get away from Earth or from suffering, it's growing through experience. Earth is one of many classrooms, rich with contrast and intensity. What you learn here in one lifetime might take lifetimes to learn elsewhere. The beauty, the pain, the loss, the connection, all of it refines the soul's light. And as the soul evolves, it doesn't just become wiser, it becomes more luminous, more radiant, more aligned with its original essence, Isidia, the divine spark that exists in all being. Eventually, after many lifetimes, after many journeys through form and formlessness, the soul may reach a point where it no longer needs to return to Earth. This doesn't mean it disappears. It means it has integrated the human experience into its being and now serves in higher realms, helping others, holding frequencies of love and truth. But until then, the journey continues. With each life, each death, each pause in the space between, the soul weaves a masterpiece, not of perfection, but of transformation. You are not just your current name, your current face, or your current story. You are the culmination of many stories, many faces, many names. And beyond this life, you continue. Not in a void, not in silence, but in motion, moving through realms of light, of healing, of truth. The soul's journey beyond the earthly realm is not something to fear, it is something to honor. Because every step you take here is echoed there. Every lesson, every act of love, every choice to grow shapes the path you walk in this world and the next. Death is not the end. It is the doorway to another chapter in the soul's eternal unfolding, and in that chapter there is more beauty, more wisdom, and more love than you've ever dreamed. Not every soul moves on to a final destination when it leaves the body. Some return, not as ghosts or spirits hovering in unfinished business, but as new lives, new bodies, new names, new stories. This is the cycle that so many ancient traditions have spoken of, whispered across centuries with quiet reverence and mystery, reincarnation. But it's not what many people assume. It's not punishment. It's not a sentence. It's a return made by choice, or by agreement, for the purpose of growth, healing, and deeper understanding. The soul returns not because it failed, but because it is still becoming. There are countless stories, quietly shared in every culture, of children speaking of lives they shouldn't remember, names they never learned, towns they've never visited, scars in the same places they once had injuries in another life. These memories often fade as the child grows, like mist dissolving in the morning light, but while they remain, they carry a strange certainty, a knowing that transcends logic, the voice of a soul still echoing with pieces of its last incarnation. Some children describe their past lives in stunning detail. They name people, recall how they died, even describe emotions surrounding events that no one taught them. Parents are left stunned. investigators verify details that were never shared, and in those rare but powerful moments, the veil between lifetimes feels paper-thin. These stories aren't coincidences, they're windows. And through them, we glimpse a truth that so many have felt but few have understood. The soul doesn't end when the body does. It transforms, it continues, and sometimes it comes back. Why does it return? Because there is something more to learn, something more to experience. The soul, in its essence, is not driven by comfort, it is drawn to evolution. And the earth, as difficult and painful as it can be, is a school, a sacred ground for expansion. In every lifetime, the soul chooses lessons, not as punishment, but as refinement. Like heat to metal, life's trials shape and test the spirit, drawing out strength, wisdom, compassion. Each incarnation becomes a mirror, reflecting the soul's progress and showing where more love, more truth, more clarity is needed. Karma plays a role in this journey, but not in the way it's often misunderstood. Karma isn't retribution, it's resonance. It's the natural echo of energy. What you give, you receive. What you harm, you must one day understand. It's not about revenge from the universe, it's about balance. When a soul causes harm, whether intentionally or through ignorance, there is a need to experience the effects of that harm, not to suffer, but to feel, to expand awareness through empathy, to walk in the other's shoes, to see from the other side. In the same way, acts of love and healing ripple forward, creating opportunities in future lives for joy, connection, and insight. Every soul carries a kind of energetic signature, shaped by its choices across lifetimes. And every new life is both a continuation and a fresh canvas. The soul arrives carrying the essence of its past, but with the chance to choose anew. That is the gift of reincarnation, the ability to return, not trapped by fate, but invited by possibility. Soul contracts are another part of this story, the unseen agreements made between souls before birth. They are not forced upon us, they are chosen. You might choose to be born to a certain family, to experience a specific trauma, to meet a particular person not out of masochism, but because your soul knew it could grow through those experiences. These contracts are made in love, even when they involve pain, because the soul knows that in the grand scheme of eternity, even the most difficult moments are brief, but the wisdom they create can last forever. Sometimes, souls choose to return quickly. A child may die young and reincarnate into the same family, born as a sibling or cousin. The energy returns, drawn by connection, by love, by the magnetism of unfinished bonds. Other times, centuries pass. The soul waits, rests, or explores other dimensions before returning. Time, in the spirit world, does not move the way it does here. What matters is not the length of time between lives, but the readiness of the soul. And there are souls who don't return at all, not because they're done, but because their evolution moves to another level, another plane. Reincarnation on Earth is just one path. There are others. Other realms, other realities. But while we are here, this cycle is sacred. Death is not the end. Birth is not the beginning. We move through bodies like actors through roles, each life offering a stage for something new to be expressed. If you've ever met someone and felt like you've known them forever, if you've ever walked into a place and felt you were returning rather than arriving, you've touched this truth. Memory is not just stored in the brain, it is woven through the fabric of the soul, and sometimes the soul remembers. These remembrances aren't always clear. They might come in dreams, in déjà vu, in unexplained fears or talents. A child might sit at a piano and play with no training. A person might speak a language they were never taught. Or, more subtly, you might find yourself repeating patterns you can't explain, drawn to the same kinds of people, the same challenges, the same lessons again and again. That's the soul showing you where healing is still needed, where completion has not yet occurred. But this is not a punishment. This is grace. The soul returns because it is loved enough by the universe to be given another chance, another lifetime, another opportunity to bring the unconscious into the light. And so, Reincarnation is not a sentence, it's an invitation. A chance to remember who you are beneath the noise of one lifetime. A reminder that what you experience here, now, is part of a much longer, richer, and more intricate story. You've been many things, and you will be many more. But beneath all the roles, all the lifetimes, all the bodies, one truth remains. You are a soul in motion, evolving, learning, returning not because you must, but because there is more to love, more to heal, more to become. And in that becoming, lifetime after lifetime, you are moving closer and closer to who you were always meant to be. There comes a moment, whether in grief or stillness, when you realize that death doesn't take everything. Yes, it takes form. Yes, it takes presence in the physical sense. But it does not take love. It does not take memory. And it does not take the ability to connect. When someone you love crosses over, the relationship doesn't vanish. It changes. It becomes quieter, subtler, more sacred. But it's still there. And you are not powerless. You are not helpless. There are things you can do, not just for them, but for yourself. The most powerful offering you can give to a soul who has passed is your presence. Not your sorrow, not your desperation, but your presence. A calm, open heart is more nourishing to a spirit than 1,000 tears of anguish. You don't need to wait for a special day, or visit a grave, or perform a complicated ritual. All you need is intention. Speak their name out loud, light a candle, sit in silence with the thought of them, not as a wound, but as a blessing. Say what was left unsaid, share your day with them, thank them for who they were, and still are, in your life. You can create simple rituals to honor the dead, not because they demand it, but because your soul needs it. These practices don't have to follow tradition, they can be entirely your own. Maybe you keep a small space in your home where you place a photo, a flower, an object that reminds you of them. Maybe you write them letters, pour your heart onto the page and let the ink carry your voice across the veil. Maybe you set aside one day a month to celebrate their memory with music, food, or laughter. Well, if the things they loved when they were here. Whatever you choose, keep it sacred. Let it be something that opens your heart rather than deepens your pain. These acts are not just about remembrance, they are about connection, about energy. When you honor them in peace, you help lift their vibration, no matter yours. You remind them that they are still seen, still cherished, still part of your journey. But honoring the dead isn't just about them, it's about keeping your own soul clear, soft, and aligned. When someone passes, it often leaves an energetic residue, a mixture of longing, regret, confusion, or even fear. If left unattended, these emotions can cloud your spirit and your space. That's why daily spiritual hygiene is essential. You are not just a body walking through the world, you are a field of energy, and that field must be tended to. Begin each day with intention. You don't need to spend hours in meditation, just a few moments of quiet reflection, a breath of gratitude, a whispered prayer of release. Let go of any energy that is not yours. Call back your power. Imagine a soft light around you, dissolving the heaviness, clearing your aura, calming your thoughts. Do this not just for your peace, but so that if a departed soul is nearby, they feel welcomed, not weighed down. Your space matters too. The energy of your home holds memory. Open the windows, let the light in, burn herbs like sage, Palo Santo, or rosemary if it feels right to you. Play music that lifts your spirit. Speak kindly in your space, and your space will become a sanctuary, not just for you, but for any soul passing through. There is a practice, simple yet profound, that can transform both your grief and their journey. Speak to them, release them, and thank them. Speak to them not as someone who is gone, but as someone who has simply changed rooms. Let your words be clear and heartfelt. Release them not in sorrow, but in reverence. Let them know they are free to go where they need to go, to continue their evolution, to find their next place of purpose. And thank them, not just for their life, but for their love, for their presence, for the impact they left on your soul. When you do this, something shifts. The veil thins, the heaviness lightens. You begin to feel the bond, not as pain, but as warmth, not as absence, but as presence in a new form. This is how healing begins, not by forgetting, not by numbing, but by relating differently, by recognizing that you still have a role to play, not just, and so do they. And maybe the most important thing you can do, for both them and yourself, is to accept death, not as an end, not as a punishment, but as a sacred transition. When you accept death, you stop fearing it. And when you stop fearing it, you begin to truly live. You stop wasting time. You stop holding back love. You stop pretending there will always be more time. You say what you need to say. You forgive. You awaken. This acceptance doesn't come all at once. It comes in waves. It comes with tears and silence and moments of sudden clarity. But each time you surrender to the truth that life is impermanent, your own life becomes more vivid, more sacred. You begin to see beauty in the fleeting, holiness in the ordinary. And you begin to live in a way that honors not only those who have passed, but those who are still here, including yourself. Death is not meant to be the enemy. It is the most faithful companion of life. It walks beside you from your first breath, not to threaten you, but to remind you of what matters. When you remember that everything is temporary, you hold things more gently, you cherish the now, you love deeper, you forgive faster, you live not just for yourself, but for all the souls who no longer can, and in doing so, you become a light, a bridge, a living prayer. You become someone through whom both the living and the departed find peace. So if you've lost someone, speak to them, honor them, release them, thank them, and then live. Live with your eyes open, live with your heart unguarded. Live with the knowledge that life is a blink, and that your love, your conscious, intentional, powerful love, echoes across realms. Because the truth is, when you learn how to hold death gently, you also learn how to hold life fiercely, and that is a gift to every soul on both sides of the veil.